Welcome to Season 5 of the Multifarious Man Podcast, Episode 501, Love and Coffee. As always, I'm your host, John Michael. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Multifarious Man and find links to the show and blog at www.multifariousman.com. I am so thankful that I'm able to continue producing this show 5 years after it all began. 2020 has been a year like the world hasn't seen in 100 years. COVID-19 has impacted everyone around the globe, and here in the United States, at the time of this recording, we continue to experience a record number of cases. Additionally, last month, over 150 million citizens exercised their constitutional right to vote for the next president. When I first started planning this season, I knew I was ready to take things to the next level, so I hired a graphic designer to create a new logo for the podcast and completely redesign the website. This season, I will continue to share my love of the arts and bring you more interviews highlighting artists and entrepreneurs. First up is an interview I conducted with Vince and Sam Marie of Third World Premium Coffee and the new show streaming on the Jam Network TV, aptly titled Love and Coffee with Vince and Sam Marie. So sit back, relax, and after the break, join us for an informative interview. This one is for the coffee lovers out there.
Numerous and varied, greatly diverse and manifold. All the things I want to say that never been told. Demon Sinatra to Drake and Pharrell. When I'm listening to this week, you can never tell. Bogey and Bacall, even Meryl Streep. The devil wears Prada, even the big sleep. It doesn't matter where you stand. I'm the multifarious man.
Welcome back to the Multifarious Man Podcast. Heading into the production of Season 5, I contracted a graphic artist to redesign the show and logo of my website. Up until now, the logo and the website were created and maintained by yours truly. Now, graphic design is not my strength. Many thanks to Jeffrey Evans of Ivory Coast Design for using his skills to bring my vision to life. Now, when I reached out to Vince Carroll to interview him and Sam Marie about their new business, Third World Premium Coffee, and the show, Love and Coffee with Vince and Sam Marie, the plan was to just talk about coffee in the show. Now, due to a happy coincidence, in part one of the interview, we start out talking about Vince's history in marketing, which is how we met in the early 90s, before we learn a little bit about the history of coffee. So here it is. Part 1. All right. Hello. Today on the Multifarious Man Podcast, I have Vince and Sam Marie of Third World Premium Coffee, and also
Third World Premium Coffee, yes.
And also, they have a new show that's actually launching tomorrow, December 1st, on Jam Network TV, and
yes.
That's Love and Coffee with Vince and Sam Marie. First off, Vince, welcome. Welcome to the show. I really appreciate you coming out today. History, Vince and myself, we go back many, many moons.
Like car seats. We go back like car seats.
So I was a young, impressionable kid going to City College back in the early 90s. And a mutual friend introduced me to Vince. And I had the pleasure of coming on as an intern with Vince with his PR company, which was Blow Up Media.
Boom.
And
look at you now. Oh my God.
Man, it was an amazing experience. I really appreciate you taking a chance on me, showing me what you do. I learned about the industry, whether it was music, film, learned about business. Learned about, how your word is important, but contracts are even more important.
It's true.
You know, because people will tell you, you know, my word is my bond. But again, when it comes to business, whether it's friends or however that relationship is, you have to make sure that
I'm getting teary-eyed here. I'm like, teary-eyed.
You have to make sure you're smart about it, and treat it like a business. Like, you can have personal relationships with people, but you have to respect their business. And, you know, got to meet many, you know, entertainers over the years, you know, from the
billionaires
from the Fugees. Got to meet boxers, Shannon Briggs. Shout out to Shannon Briggs.
Shannon's probably watching right now, but he will be.
So that was interesting. So here I was learning about the business. You know, and Vince, I appreciate you would just sit and talk to me and tell me about whatever. We'd go to industry shows. I think, you know, we saw the Loonies perform at some club out in Jersey, I want to say.
Before they blew.
Yes. So we heard them perform I Got Five on it live, like before they really took off. And I think one of your clients back then was the Spin Doctors, I want to say.
Spin Doctors was my client. Actually, the Loonies, they came out of the Bay Area.
Okay.
And they were there because of some of the promotions that we were doing before. But, you know, we had, you know, it was a time where hip-hop was young. You know, I had my sights on Madison Avenue, you know, not just the regular, you know, publicist and or media guy. I had this vision for a branding company before branding became like the thing. You know, it was all about the brand to me. And I'm so glad that a lot of people like yourself, they came out of our incubator and went on to do great things. I mean, so many great things. And that's what it was all about. Russell Simmons gave that to us. You know, Teddy Powell gave it to me and my boy Dwayne Guilford. Teddy Powell, if you don't know who Teddy Powell is, let me just give you just like a prerequisite of history when it comes to marketing and promotions. Now, we all know in the music and entertainment industry, the power came from the music. Because that's all we had in the 50s
That's
and 60s.
right.
It wasn't giving us anything else. So if that was our commodity, you had to get behind the music just to get the business together, right? This goes back to the days of James Brown, all these other folks. So Teddy Powell was the biggest and only black promoter at that time. White folks wasn't doing no black promotions. I mean, if you crossed over like a Chuck Berry, you may get on the Alan Freed concert and that run.
But for the most, you were in the Chitlin circuit.
I want heroes sitting in their pretty theaters and stuff like that. So this Chitlin circuit thing was created. Teddy Powell was located in Newark. I was like a flyer guy for him. And came out of Teddy Powell's strengths, okay? Listen to this now. Came out of his tutelage was Clarence Avant, which is the Godfather, okay? Al Heyman, which is what, like, undisputedly probably the biggest black concert promoter ever. Like, Live Nation wouldn't have a black division. This is prerequisite of Rock Nation.
Okay.
You know, because when I was managing Nelly, co-managing Nelly, we had to deal with Al Heyman. That's the gangster. He's also the current partner and manager to Floyd Mayweather right now.
Okay.
So when he got into the boxing business, he really went to the next level. But, you know, that is where the power was. So we had to get into the music industry that way. But we came out of that school of Teddy Powell, getting back to the story, who always gave back. Like, those guys were older than me, but I was like a little young buck coming through. Hip-hop came to intercession by then. And by then, Russell Simmons created like this incubator hub that and gave back to like so many different entrepreneurs, Andre Harrell, Dave Lighty, so many of us. And we all had our different lanes. And my lane just happened to be marketing. And I, you know, wanted to produce records. I was a part of the group. Everybody knows that. Some people know, some people don't. But my eyes was always on marketing and the branding. Samri got in touch with me. And what's our greatest show on television on AMC?
Mad Men.
Mad Men. Okay, Madison Avenue.
It is.
Gotcha.
It tells the whole story, you know, because Madison Avenue controls the culture. Whoever controls the marketing controls the culture. You control the way advertisement is done. You control the outlay and the culture and how culture is going to flow. So we was doing branding way before. That's what Blow Up was, that company that you mentioned. It was the first marketing company because when hip-hop really blew up, I saw it. I saw that there's going to be some marketing needs to be done, some public, not just PR work, but marketing. You know, marketing plans need to be done. And Russell saw that. He said, yo, man, listen, Don't lose that. That's a lane. You know, some people go into the production, some people go into the DJing, some people go into the production. That's the lane that needs to be filled. So that's why I felt he gave me office space for that. We had our first magazine. We did all out of Def Jam 25. You can read in there. Dan Charnas mentions my brother Chuck and myself and Jim
Chuck
Burnett
Nasty
with the first rap magazine.
Was this
used as the vehicle for the marketing?
Was this the hip hop hit list?
Hip hop hit list.
Okay.
Yeah, you had your share working on that as well.
Yeah, I did. I mean, because you guys were, you know, you and your brother Chuck. It was not only about content and advertising, which is key for any magazine that's out there, advertising and ad dollars, but also the production, how to actually, you know, print it, how to do all those things, working in different programs. And I, you know, the stuff I learned working in, you know, the prerequisite to Adobe, I forgot what we used back then, but Publisher and all those things. Corel Draw. That's right. So using those, these are things that I've, over the years, and it's funny. I picked up a little bit here, picked up a little bit here. I went to school for, you know, communication, film, and video, and I've been working in finance for 20 years. But in the past 5 years, you know, I was like, you know what? This is something I've learned. This is something I know, from film production to audio production. It's like, well, why don't I do this? And, you know, and this was my way. So this was my way, you know, talking to people like this and letting people tell their story. I'm excited about this. So I've been listening to podcasts for years. And so for the past 5 years, I started doing this little show. And it's been over time. You know, a couple of years ago, a buddy called me up and said, hey, let's just go do a live version. So we, here in Jacksonville, we went to a diner in downtown Jacksonville. Me and my buddy, Beeman Kendall, shout out to Beeman Kendall. We set up, I had never done a live podcast before. I knew I could do it. So I figured it out. Got my equipment together. We went downtown and we did it for like 3 weeks in a row. We recorded live, broadcast live, had nice dialogue, talking about everything from politics to even getting into things like the mayoral race that was happening in Jacksonville at the time, talking about community policing. So things that are what people are talking about now. We were talking about it on my show 2 years ago. Awesome. So it's kind of full circle. So now, you know, I said, you know what? I was doing everything myself, you know, trying to figure out my way through. I was promoting the show, but I was like, I needed to do something different in terms of get someone to professionally develop my website, which I did this year. Someone to professionally come up with the logo, which you see on the screen, which was, you know, I gave my feedback, and I see it's a difference. It's, if you're going to take it to the next level, you got to start doing it. And this is why, you know, I've been kind of following you guys, you know, since we've reconnected, you know, and I think you guys were doing a web show a few years ago. It's like
we kind of put it on hold because we had this concept.
So, you know, so it was kind of like seeing people do that. And I know so many different people that are actors, writers, producers. And I'm like, you know what? I can do the same thing in terms of getting them on my show, give them a venue to promote things, to talk about anything, and then own my content, send it out, stream it. So this is where this concept came out. So now 2020, COVID comes along and everybody's home. So, you know, I had the time to develop it to the next level. And I just thought, you know, when I saw, you know, when we get more into talking about the show and talking about the coffee, it just seemed like the perfect time. And calling back on some of the things that we used to talk about in that office, you know, downtown in the, you know, shadow of the World Trade Center. I mean, if you think about it, you know, where we were.
For a lot of people were.
So it was interesting to see but to see the behind the scenes of how, you know, the people in the industry, regular folk, but talking about business. And you're right, marketing, you know, there's a reason why today, you know, back in the day, you know, as you well know, and maybe the audience doesn't know, you know, if we were going to have commercials or products that we would promote, it would only be like, if we were lucky, we were on Soul Train commercials. Where there was very few places, this was before BET days, where there were very few places where we could actually promote our own things that we develop or even become spokespeople. I mean, who would have thought that today, I mean, if you think about it today, Snoop Dogg and Bad Bunny are doing Corona commercials. That some things like that where we're producing shows where we've got our own shows. You look at all the stuff that a lot of the hip hop producers and a lot of people in the industry have done over the years, and you just see the trajectory as it going, and that's kind of like what you were leading into all those years ago.
Yeah, I saw the vision there, and it's a natural progression. It's like when you see a culture and you see a culture from its infancy, and you kind of like see the growth and so how fast that growth is going. Like if you plant a bean plant in your house and the vine start growing like a stalk, you're gonna know like I got to get a bigger pot. I got to get a bigger pot because it's just growing and growing and growing. And we know beans, just the history of a beanstalk is just going to grow, grow, grow. That's what I saw as hip hop. I thank God for having that vision to see how fast it was growing. Because my brother Chuck and I, and shout out to Jay Burnett because he's mentioned in Dan Condis' book too, The Big Payback, along with us. You guys got to get that. It's a good read. Okay. Not only in hip hop business, but the growth of the whole culture along the way. So I was honored to be included in that book. He does a nice little, he actually attributes me for, jump starting, Will Smith's career. And the only reason because Ann Carly used to work for the Hip Hop Hitless magazine.
Ah, okay.
Who then started simultaneously working for Jive.
Okay.
They got him signed, and then she became his manager and kind of like blew it up. But if she wasn't there to cover the Battle of World Supremacy at the New Music Seminar that year, because I told her to focus only on Will Smith. He's the up-and-coming giant. Because we knew of him being out of Newark and being as a rapper part-time and then in the streets. This kid's coming out of Philly, and that DJ he got is sick. Because he was the only one.
Jazzy Jeff, man.
With our DJ Mukadeen. Our DJ Mukadeen was the only one doing that super transforming. It was nuts. And then Jazzy Jeff was doing it. And we were like, whoa.
These guys are musicians. Like anyone that knows anything about anything, they are musicians. It's not just scratching. It's not the things. They're producers. Right. The production, everything. And if you kind of pull that thread and kind of look back to some of these super DJs and producers and look at everything they've touched, a lot of the music you've been nodding your head to for 20, 25 years, 30, 35 years, you can trace it back to them. So that's quite interesting. And I like you talk about a bean plant. So let's talk about how do you get from Blow Up Media, Hip Hop Hit List, all these years later, where does the coffee come in? Now I'm probably like you. I consider myself a coffee snob. Everything from French pressed. I have hand grinder. People would laugh at me in the office. It's like, what is this, a coffee shop? I mean, and I would only have whole bean coffee because I would only grind it fresh and make a cup. Right. Even have a little espresso pump. Hand, everything was hand. So it's like, I'm into my coffee.
Coffee connoisseur for real. So you know about the third wave coffee movement.
Talk about it.
Okay, let's talk about it. Okay, so you want to start with that? You want me to start? Like, she can jump in. The third wave coffee movement, first wave was like the coffee shops.
Okay.
There's an Italian guy named Senka during the war who decided to freeze dry coffee.
And Senka is world famous.
For the instant coffee. So he sells to the government, and now it's used in army barracks all over the world during the war. Come back from the war, now it's used at the soda shops. The diners used to be just soda stands.
Yep.
That's what they call it. Soda stands, right? Soda stands transforms to diner where you get a nice burger joint, turns it to coffee. Because, the GIs came over and said, hey, I need a cup of coffee. So Senka, which is like the instant coffee. So that was the first wave. I want to bypass all that. Of course, coffee shops, people wasn't really appreciating coffee as much. Coffee is like a jewel. And then we'll come back to our story because it all leads back to this. Coffee is a jewel. And there's something in the commodity that was kind of like stripped, like most of the commodities were stripped from a very particular people, but we're going to get back into that. Mm-hmm. So the second wave of coffee came in when Charles Schultz from Starbucks actually saw like, hey, this could be more than just a coffee shop.
More than just a 50-cent cup. Yeah. Okay.
He took a trip to Italy and saw how the baristas was there and the coffee shops and how coffee was a culture and people came down. But back in England, they called them, coffee shops is called universities, penny universities. Why? Because that's where you can come in,
get together,
you sip some coffee, get a jolt of get a little bit in the brain, to make you think faster, and you just start talking, hours and hours about intelligent shit, right? And so it was one of those things where they called it the Penny University. But that was back in the day. Fast forward, Charles Schulz, Starbucks, by the way, took it global. Like franchises like McDonald's got farms and shit all over the place, right? That was the second wave. Now, when anything become big like that, and coffee being how many billion per year, baby?
250 billion.
Just here in America.
Oof.
Just American use.
I believe
worldwide,
it.
like triple, maybe quadruple that, right?
Okay.
Worldwide use of coffee. Reason being is that it's the only legal drug that we as a people really look at as a commodity to really make money. You have alcohol, you have cocaine, which they transform to codeine, opiates, and shit like that. We know the horror story that did get to both the white and the black community over the last couple of years.
Devastation.
But then it's coffee. That's the hidden black gold. Of course, there's oil. Just like any other commodities is there. You know, fair market trade, everything is there sitting in place. Like, you just can't go and jump into the coffee business. You got to do some things. So we did that. But I just happened to meet a young lady that family coffee farmers. You know,
wow.
Right? Family coffee farmers out of Ethiopia, which happens to be the birthplace of coffee. Okay. They heard about the goat herder and the goat. Ethiopian sheep herder. You know, he's trying to move the goats along. He goes over there to dancing goats like, oh, Jenny. He's all souped up. He's chewing on
that caffeine.
The coffee berry.
Okay.
Chews on the coffee berry. So the Ethiopian sheep herder grabs it. He cooks it up, chefs it up a little bit. Bitter as hell. Let me water this down. You know, somehow, I don't know how I made a mistake. Came back to water and kept it. Oh, shit. Okay, it's not as bad. You know, as a tea. They tried to make it sort of like a tea. And then that transformed to something that keeps them up, keep them energized. Found that all these people and all these workers were more energized. A lot of trade was going on through the Mid-Easterns, right?
Okay.
So the Mid-Easterns did more of the trade. Like, so you have, not only in oil, they kind of like touched Spain more than anybody else. There was because of the oil and the commodities that come out of the Middle East, they were able to do a lot of the huge trading. If you look into the different religions, you'll see that is to be true. Okay. So they traded Ethiopians coffee for silk and things like that nature. So it was the Middle Easterns that took the coffee from the Mid-East and the Ethiopian region to Spain. Okay. Spain being the richest people at that particular time because Spain owned all the gold. Why did they own the gold? Because they were the first in America. In the Americas, digging for the gold. Okay. So they owned the gold. They had the ships that came back and forth. And Spain dominated all of South America. That's why Peru, Colombia,
Brazil,
and all those places,
all that.
Brazil are the biggest growing of coffee areas at that particular place. Fast forward back, let's say rewind. Schulz brought the second wave of coffee. Now we're in the third wave. The third wave is reminiscent to the same wave of wine was back in the 90s. You remember everyone became a wine connoisseur? Oh, man, they just don't drink at the store no more.
It's got an event, wine and cheese, a cheese plate. You're smelling it.
That's what's going on right now. So the whole show of everything we do, Loving Coffee with Vincent Samri, is trying to make the millennials or when I say millennials and X generations get more familiar with the entire coffee wave like you are, but experience coffee in a different way, and then all the health benefits of coffee. The governments always, I don't say government, I'm going to say governments, plural. I'm not just kicking this to America's ass, but the governments always try to downplay the shit that's really good for you and then upplay the shit that's bad for you. So they sell opiates by the tons. Oh, buy this one, you know. You may grow a monkey on your neck, but you know, other than that, side effects are good. And then coffee is bad. Oh my God, it's bad because they don't want you to look into that money pot. You know, coffee is a huge commodity. It's the second largest drink beverage opposed to water in the world. Wow! And not only us, but our people need to be a part of it. Okay. Boom. Fast forward. This is the third wave of coffee. It's the third wave movement. It's not ours. It's something that's already going on. Okay. You dig into it. You Google third wave coffee movement. You'll see. Everybody wants to have coffee at home now. Everybody want to have their own little mini baristas at home. They want to experience different grains and see the origins of coffee. You know? So I met Babe.
And also like an independent coffee shops. So
right.
Yes. I love, that's my biggest thing. Wherever I travel or even my hometown, that was my thing. I love small coffee shops because the personality, it's usually owned by it's not a franchise. It's owned by the people that are in there working.
Right.
And it's a place like when I was in college, that's, you know, when we went to diners to do homework and stuff, where you hung out, you know, in the cafeteria, you hung out in coffee shops and you'd be there all day. Now, you know, and with franchises doing it, it's always nice. If I see a mom and pop shop, I'm going to go there and get my coffee because, one, the coffee's going to taste different.
That's right.
That's one thing. It's not going to taste like everywhere else. Because I don't care what anybody says. You go to any Starbucks in the world, coffee's going to taste the same, no matter what.
Well, I'm not saying they burn the beans, but a lot of them.
And I tell people that, and that's one of the things people say, and, you know, but the heat of the water is key. You know, well, even before you get to that, and I'm sure you guys can tell some amazing stories about, you know, everything from, you know, from the harvesting to the actual, you know, actually getting to where it's at the table. And how you get there. But you're right. You know, different, you know, brews, they taste different. How you brew it, you know, whether you're percolating it, whether it's a French press, all these different things.
Pour overs, the whole 9 yards.
All these wonderful things.
Difference.
Okay.
That's sure. And so the third wave coffee movement is that movement that's going on right now. And going back to our earlier conversation, you got to know how, if you're in marketing, you got to know how to recognize a trend. And the trend is something that's reminiscent to not only America, but all the other cultures that come here in America. Coffee shops, it's not the first time coffee shops was big. It was just called something else back in the 60s. They were called beatniks. That's how the whole downtown era, you know, Bleecker Avenue, listening to jazz.
Places to hear poetry, jazz. Yeah, okay.
You know? So we were there before. Hip-hop brought it back in the 90s. But in Europe, it's something that goes on a constant basis. Plus, coffee shops in Amsterdam is called weed shops.
Okay.
They call coffee shops, but it's really where you go get your marijuana. So they call them coffee shops, so they're really dispensaries, right?
Gotcha.
And so a lot of people know that. But see, now with that going on, the legalization of marijuana, especially in New York and New Jersey area, because once it come here, you got 13 other states, but once it come here, it's going to just go.
Yeah.
We like
just the population, just how big it is, yeah.
So with the coffee shops, the legalization of marijuana, it just put people in a mindset to be here. That's why Brooklyn got over, I don't know, about 60 baristas. We're going to try to visit all of them. We're going to go take you on a ride with our show all around the country. We're just going to dive into them, crash on them, and let you know their secrets in different ways and making everybody coffee lovers along the way, you know?
Recognizing, you know, specialty coffee shops.
Right.
You know? They usually wouldn't get the recognition because everybody, like, people call themselves a coffee drinker, but if you're drinking just Starbucks, you haven't really
exactly. I had to learn that. I'm so glad that, you know, I discovered, like, the first time I had Kona, like, it was like, I was like, wait, what is this? Once you have a really good brew, everything else tastes like freeze dried, and you're like, what is this? And I went from drinking coffee with milk and sugar to now I love my coffee black. And sometimes I'll add a little something.
Because
exactly.
Before, once you add something to it, it changes it.
It changes the flavor. And then learning about French press and, you know, just different ways and how sometimes I like to let it sit in there before I drink because it gets real strong, or sometimes I like it lighter. But, you know, I'm excited about it because, you know, try to tell people.
We're happy. We're impressed. Well, I'm very impressed that you're such a coffee connoisseur.
I even had a little hand foamer. It wasn't powered, but I just little things like that. People would crack up. They'd be like, "What are you doing?" They'd walk past my desk in the morning, and they'd hear me grinding my coffee. They were like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm grinding my coffee." They were like, "Well, why didn't you get an electric one?" It's like, because it makes too much noise. I just wanted a hand grinder. I can adjust the size. I can do all these different things, and it's the best thing. But the taste, and people think it's funny. Like some people, you know, some people drink coffee as a stimulant to wake themselves up. Right. For me, I just love the taste. I can drink a cup of coffee before I go to bed.
It doesn't, you know,
and it doesn't.
We also do coffee beans, like 17 coffee beans, chocolate covered. It's like equivalent to like 1 cup of coffee. Do just the same.
I just ordered some, man. I took advantage.
We saw some came through.
I took advantage of your Black Friday sales and everything, and I think I got me about 4 bags of the chocolate covered espresso beans. They are so good. That was part 1 of my interview with Vince and Sam-Ri. You can find links to the Facebook Live video of part 1 in the blog section on the Multifarious Man website at www.multifariousman.com. and also on the Multifarious Man podcast page on Facebook. Listen in next week to the show for part 2 of the interview. Now, after the break, I'm going to give you the lowdown on the books, TV shows, and movies that have been filling up my time lately. Sit back, and we'll be back shortly. We're back on the Multifarious Man podcast. Now's the part of the show where I tell you about what I'm reading, watching, and listening to. First up is The Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi, the sequel to her Hugo Award-winning debut novel, Children of Blood and Bone. This is a well-developed West African-inspired fantasy world. The sequel picks up immediately after the dramatic events at the end of Part 1, Children of Blood and Bone. I couldn't wait to get my hands on this book and have not been able to put it down. If you love magic and lore, you will not be disappointed. The West African themes give the realm of fantasy a much-needed shot in the arm. Next up is the first volume of Barack Obama's presidential memoirs titled A Promised Land. I'm listening to the Audible version read by our charismatic 44th president. The book takes you behind the scenes of Mr. Obama's early political aspirations through pivotal moments in his first term. On television, there are 2 shows that have held my interest and exceeded my expectations, and they are both on streaming services. Season 2 of The Mandalorian on Disney Plus continues to expand the Star Wars universe while bringing to life fan favorites from the animated world, Ahsoka Tano and Bo-Katan, portrayed by sci-fi favorites Rosario Dawson and Katie Sackhoff, respectively. The latest episode finally showed us one of the most notorious characters from the movie universe. The other show is from the other top-tier sci-fi franchise. This, of course, is Season 3 of Star Trek Discovery on CBS All Access. The characters and adventures on this prequel-sequel series are top-notch and continue to show what happens when you combine quality writing with premier actors. Next, in the world of movies, is a movie that I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did. Disney Plus has finally released the live-action version of Mulan to all subscribers of Disney Plus without the additional premium cost. All I can say is forget comparisons to the animated classic and just sit back and enjoy this wonderful story. You will not be disappointed. Look for my full review on the Multifarious Man blog in coming weeks. As for what I'm listening to, the latest is an unexpected album drop by one of hip-hop's royalty, and it's been getting most of my streams. I'm talking about Extinction Level Event 2, or rather Extinction Level Event 2, The Wrath of God by The Dragon, Busta Rhymes. This album is pure hip-hop at its finest. Well, that's all for this episode. Thank you again for tuning in to Season 5, Episode 1, or rather 501, if you're checking this out on your pod player. Don't forget to tune into the next episode, number 502, for part 2 of my interview with Vince and Sam Rhee of Third World Premium Coffee. Make sure you subscribe to the Multifarious Man podcast everywhere that podcasts are available. Also, make sure you head on over to Jam Network TV on the web and streaming devices everywhere to watch episode 1 of Love and Coffee with Vince and Sam Rhee. Until next time, Multifarious Man is out of here.
Numerous and varied, greatly diverse and manifold. All the things I want to say that never been told. Dina Sinatra to Drake and Pharrell. When I'm listening to this week, you can never tell. Bogey and Bacall, even Meryl Streep. The devil wears Prada, even the big sleep. It doesn't matter where you stand, I'm the Multifarious Man.